And welcome to what may well be one of the last Mark Talks mags. And we're going to do something a little bit different today. Sniffin Glue, the punk fanzine. Now, once upon a time I had all of these and somehow I lost them. And I think I know what happened. I used to live in a flat in Clevedon, my old hometown. And my landlord and I and my flatmates used to go to the pub and invite everybody back, and we used to have ridiculously mad parties going on till God knows what time in the morning. And it just happened that I'd been showing somebody at this party a copy of Sniffin Glue, which I'll tell you about in a minute. It's this one. And the next day I went to put it back and all the others had gone. So somebody at the party pinched all the Sniffin Glues other than this one. There was a lot of people there. I don't know who it was. It wouldn't have been one of my friends on Facebook, that's for sure, because they're all close friends. But somebody that was there decided they were going to take them. So all I'm left with is this one. And the only reason I'd taken this one out was because I remember the conversation, because the Cortinas are on the front, the Bristol punk band. And so I'd been chatting about this and how the only time, well, 2 times I went to the Roxy Club in London. One of them was to see the Cortinas, and there was a coach from Bristol organised and we went up for that. And the other time was to see the Saints with supports. Talking of the Roxy Club, there you go, Punk Rock Roxy Club. T-shirt done by my old late friend Johnny Deluxe, Soho scenester, an all-round good guy who had a few of these printed. I suppose it's got to be probably about 12 years ago now, and these were worn by the bar staff and the other staff at the Roxy Club. As you'll see on Don Let's Film, the punk rock movie, you'll see the bar staff wearing them. And Johnny somehow got the screens for this bit and printed a few off, and then so he didn't contravene any copyright, he put Roxy Club underneath. Anyway, so there we go. So Sniffin Glue number 9, April/May 1977, and on the cover we have the Cortinas, Bristol's favourites. And I've not looked at this Sniffin Glue for a long time, so I'm sure it'll all come back to me when we get in there, but I'm not sure what I'm going to come across. It says here, what the fuck's happening to this mag? Oh no, Steve Mick's not editing this issue. Steve Mick was Steve Micallef. First page, we got a bizarre record distributions ad, and then the Steve Mick bulletin. Contrary to rumour and gossip, Mark P has not left Sniffin Glue. What's happening is he's taken a break for a couple of months and I'm doing the editing. But as you can see in this ish, who's still around. Steve Mick self-published a book a couple of years ago with a lot of memories and poems and thoughts about the punk scene, which is quite interesting actually. Probably quite hard to get hold of now. It's quite a limited run that we're done. So what have we got in this? Contributors, Danny Baper. Who's Danny Baper? I think they meant Danny Baker though. So page 3, which should probably be page 5 actually, but there we go. This is the Models. Released one single on Step Forward. Included Marco Peroni, who would go on to be in the chart version of Adam and the Ants. And that one single, which was Freeze / Man of the Year, is one of my favourite singles of 77. An absolute classic, which I personally don't think many bettered it. That little run of singles on Step Forward I suppose you've got to say Mark Perry did have his finger on the pulse, but that little run of singles by the Cortinas, the Models, Chelsea, the Fall, of course, was a great run of singles, and they did a few albums as well, including one by the Sods, a great lost punk album. So there's an interview with the Models here. We've got serious views, but we believe you should enjoy yourself. And there's a lyric from Freeze off that first single here. Thousands of people didn't take a stand. They died like flies under fascist hands. And Cliff Fox, who was the singer and guitarist, said, the parallel between then and now, people not exercising their rights and being stepped on and used. You could say the same now, couldn't you? Nothing's changed in that 43 years. Turn over to a review of The Damned in Great Malvern. Great Malvern Winter Gardens, Saturday the 26th of March 1977, 2 days after my 17th birthday. And more damned and more damned. Damned, damned, damned. And that's a Steve Micallef article. And here's the Cortinas piece. Without warning, the Cortinas hit the stage and started tearing through their set. Automatically, everybody surges out of the bar towards the Blair. Their single, of course, on Step Forward was Fascist Dictator, backed by Television Families. And anybody of my age that was following punk nationally and particularly in Bristol in 77 will tell you that it was one of the great early punk singles. And if you were lucky enough to have lived in Bristol then and were going to gigs, then you saw a band that were just fantastic live. Nick Shepherd, guitarist, and Dexter, their bass player, were manic. They were all over the stage, and it was a sight to behold seeing them live. I've got to say, they were absolutely brilliant. So what do we say here? Said, we come from Bristol. I somehow don't think it would have been in that accent, because the Cortinas famously were very much grammar school boys, playing the working class. But they were good guys. It says, Dexter shuffles, jumps and jerks to the left of the stage, while Nick's always moving like some hungry caged animal. At the centre of the stage, up front, is hefty Jeremy Valentine, the band's spokesman and vocalist. And behind him is little Dan Swan, the drummer. I think he was about 15, Danny Swan. We're all happily tottering to the tune in a lively fever, but it's not enough. Thank you, you apathetic bastards. Are you stoned or what? Taunts Jeremy. It's often the way. Mike Fewins on lead remains taut and motionless. Mike Fewins barely moved. Whether that was stage fright or just the way he was, I don't know. And throughout this gig review, it's Jeremy Valentine taunting the crowd. Why don't you go back to the disco, you Oxford fags? Next, Defiant Pose is a killer. It is a killer single. Another single by them. Here's to all you boring people who watch television all night. It's called Television Families, and that was probably, well, in my eyes anyway, their greatest song. Great band, Cortinas. There's people I know that could tell me if this is true or not, but I always felt that funnily enough, it was CBS again, wasn't it? When the Clash signed to CBS and released their first album, they got royally slagged off by the punk rock police because they signed to a major label. But what did it matter? Hey, the Clash are a rock band and they made probably the greatest debut album ever. So it doesn't matter. The Cortinas signed to CBS And what the hell? It just ruined them. They became a completely different band. The album is terrible. Terrible album. So, CBS, you ruined the Cortinas. Next page, we've got a review of the Clash's first album. So there we go. What a coincidence. This is Mark Perry reviewing this. Right, I'm 20. I've lived in London for 18 of those 20 years. We've moved about 4 or 5 times, but it's always been into other council flats. I left school at 17 and got a job in a bank. First I was a clerk, then I was a computer operator. I weren't very good at that, so they made me a clerk again. Blah, 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 blah. Goes on and on and on and on and on about that. I think he's just trying to justify the fact he's a working class boy. Anyway, then we go into the lyrics of London's Burning. And he finishes by saying, the Clash album is like a mirror. It reflects all the shit. It shows us the truth. To me, it is the most important album ever released. It's as if I'm looking at my life in a film. A story of life in London, playing in and out of the flats. A school that didn't even know what an A-level was. A job that sat me behind a desk and nicked my brain. All that shit is no longer in the dark. The Clash tells the truth. And that's Mark Perry. And I guess there were, well, I don't guess, I know there were a lot of kids of his age that felt exactly the same about that album. I certainly did. I remember queuing up outside Virgin Records in Bristol to buy it. Got home on the bus, clutching it to my chest, went to my friend Mark Hartnell's house in his parents' posh room where the record player was. We went in, we shut the door behind us, we put the record on, and we were fucking blown away. There's very few times in my life that putting a record on, particularly when you're with a friend and not a word is said from start to finish, not even when you turn the record over halfway through. But that's what happened. It was that important. So I get what Mark P's saying there. Absolutely fantastic. Next page, we've got the sort of ads page where people are looking for musicians, etc. It says, and you'd often find well, not often, you'd find it in every issue, in Sniffin Glue, it'd be typed up, and then other things would come in before they photocopied it, so they'd write things in. And so here we've got written at the top, squeezed in, Generation X need a drummer, phone Stuart. Chelsea's got a new guitarist and bassist, should be on a road soon. A drummer is urgently needed by the Erect Nipples. Contact Shane, 23 Atwood Road, or Shan Scratch. The Erect Nipples, well, there was no such band, it was the Nipple Erectors, as a lot of you probably know. And Shane, who was at 23 Atwood Road, was Shane McGowan, to be in the Pogues later on. Of course, Shane McGowan was, I'm not going to call him a 1977 punk face, but he was always at the Roxy. Everybody knew him. The words face make him sound as if he was some cool guy. He was pissed all the time, wasn't he? Same then as it became later on. But so that's Shane. Be at the Nottingham Punk, you dopos. It's the event of the decade, featuring Mark's notorious alternative TV. Also includes GX, Cortinas, Models and Chelsea. And here it says, a red sticker to the Clash. It's the only real album I've heard. A red sticker presumably refers to the fact that on the early, I think it was probably about the first 10,000 of the first pressing of the Clash album, the inner sleeve had a red sticker on it. And you could send away for the Capital Radio EP if you had that, which I've got. So next page, full-page ad for the Jam's debut album In the City and single In the City, and then we've got Reviews: Johnny Moped and Screwdriver at the Roxy Club. Johnny Moped, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. A character and a half. If you can get hold of the very difficult to come by DVD, which was only a promo DVD, it came out in private cinemas a few years ago. I managed to get hold of a promo DVD for it, and it's absolutely brilliant. A great man, Johnny Moped. But I'm going to touch on Screwdriver, the support band. Screwdriver, of course, went on to be the main white power, white supremacist group in British music. Complete cunts. And Ian Stewart, the singer, well, enough about that. But what I'm going to say here is, at this point in time, they released two singles in the early punk years, and they're good singles, and they weren't a Nazi band then. Ian Stewart was in them as a singer, but the other three guys, it's sort of they've been tainted. I feel really sorry for those three guys, because all they were young kids like any other young kids all over the country forming punk bands. They were from Blackpool. And they were probably so excited. They released two singles. You're So Dumb was the first one. Antisocial was the second, I think, or the other way around, whatever. But those guys now can't look back on their teenage years and be excited about releasing those two singles, because they're forever tainted because of what Screwdriver and Ian Stewart became. And I do feel sorry for them in a way. And if you go onto a lot of punk forums, you'll find that this argument rages constantly. As soon as Screwdriver are mentioned, even if we're talking about the first single, the second single, people jump on it. Oh, fucking Nazis! Oh, it's disgusting! Ban them from the forum, whatever. But let's just take a step back. Those two first singles were nothing to do with what Screwdriver became. And as I say, I feel sorry for the other three kids that were in the band. Enough said. Call me a Nazi if you like. I'm certainly not. But there we go. Anyway, a review of The Jam in the City. In context with the Jam style of music, this album's great. Honest, it couldn't be more perfect. Jam fans must get it. The band are really picking up now, and this album should establish them nationally. And of course it did. And here's an interesting one, because it's talking about one of my favourite ever albums. The Saints, I'm Stranded. This could be called I'm Strained. Most disappointing album of 77. It drones on and doesn't even make you fancy turning it over, let alone playing again. Ted Nugent with a rocket up his arse. Well, sorry. It's a great album. Doesn't actually say who reviewed that one. The previous one, The Jam, was Steve Mick. There's a review of the Bunch of Stiffs album. Stiff would release a few of these albums where they were compilations, samplers, if you like. Review of the Stranglers, Stranglers 4, Rattus Norvegicus. The Stranglers are quaint. They sing about acne, rats, getting laid, the Mersey Tunnel, etc. They're incredibly British. Their type of humour comes from their British upbringing and from a couple of years touring, playing the pub circuit and generally taking a rough with the smooth. Full page ad for Chinese Rocks by the Heartbreakers. That's Johnny Thunder's Heartbreakers, not Tom Petty's Heartbreakers. Chinese Rocks, of course, is one of the great singles of 77. I'd put it up there in probably the top 5 singles by American bands of that year. Famously, it suffered through a muddy production and it's been remastered since, but I just happen to like that muddy production. I was playing LAMF, the album, earlier today, and for me, the muddiness of it is all part of the nostalgia. So there we go. Full page ad for The Clash. Join us on the White Riot 77 tour. And then singles and albums reviews. Screwdriver, You're So Dumb. We won't go back to them again. It is a sore subject, Screwdriver, but you've heard my thoughts on it. And anyway, it's a good. You're So Dumb is a good single, and those three guys standing next to Ian Stewart here don't deserve to be vilified like they are. They're just ordinary kids who had lived their dream and brought a record out in 1977 and have nothing to do with what went on later. So Eddie and the Hot Rods, I might be lying. I like this number, a must for all Hot Rods fans. Not immediately likeable, but after a while really enjoyable. I got to say, I don't think it's one of the Hot Rods' best singles. Radiators from Space, television screen, and see Steve Mick say simply moronic mess. It's another of the greatest singles of 77, without a doubt. Radio Star's Dirty Pictures, Elvis Costello, Less Than Zero. I've played this for about 2 weeks, so this is easy to write. If you're into hard, angry sounds and nothing else, see you later. If not, roll back the carpet, roll on the weekend and bop. It's Springsteen lyrics, voice and a funky cha-cha. Hey Ray, that's Danny Baker saying that. Then we've got Max Wall, England's Glory, and Stiff. Of course, the Stiff roster really were nothing to do with punk rock other than the Damned and the Adverts. And so their roster in the early days were more about great English eccentrics. And Max Wall being one of them, who of course was, for people of my age, will remember, was a comedian who would appear on TV doing funny walks before the Python lot started doing the Ministry's funny walks. So it's all a bit weird. Max Wall bringing out England's Glory on Stiff. But similar in a way to Ian Jory, I suppose. A great English eccentric. Here we got a review of Blondie's debut album on Private Stock. Classy trash and pop at its best. It's one that's best to start on side 2 and right from the bass intro on Man Overboard, away you go surfing on the new wave. It's red hot bubblegum. I won't bore you with what Debbie Harry is wearing on the sleeve. Enemy's already done that, but she is beautiful to the point of taking liberties. Couldn't agree more with that. 4-page ad for Stranglers, just about to release Rattus. Then we've got Joey Ramone, Plain Stupid Pin-Up #1, to Mark P and everyone at Sniffin Glue. Don't Punk Out, Joey Ramone, April Fool Day, 1977. And on the back page we have an advert for Rock On, which was a record shop run by a chap called Ted Carroll, who in the early 70s was an Irishman who well, he was always an Irishman, not just in the early 70s, but he was manager of Thin Lizzy, was Ted Carroll, and he settled in London, started Rock On, the shop, one of the great London record shops, and then I guess at the tail end of 76 started Chiswick Records, and Chiswick were the rivals, if you like, of Stiff, in that they do a lot of R&B. Great label. I remember, I think probably the first Chiswick single I bought was Little Bob Stories EP. Really good label. And then Ted Carroll then went on. Chiswick became successful. He then went on and started Ace Records, which was a rock and roll rockabilly label, did a lot of reissues, etc. So there we go. That was our look at Sniffin Glue from April-May 1977. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit of a niche market, isn't it? Punk rock and fanzines. And we all have our different opinions. But there we go. See you next time. Talks Max. Talks
Thanks.